the Sarge's Tale playlist. As he strided forward through the gate, a journey of some dozen steps, Hawn was transported light years via the linked IttR gates between Farmhold and his own Nomad's forge. IttR gates were one of the few long-range means of travel that don't tend to make one shiver as part of the crossing, due to environmental differences on either side of the gates. However, due to a blending effect caused by the gates, it's almost always a smooth and unnoticed transition when using them. Hawn shook his head free of the line of thought with a smile as he emerged and began to rush to the command center, then stopped, drawing in a slow breath before activating his comlink. CNC, save me some time and point me there, if you'd be so kind. He was smiling as the telltale tingle of transport began. You really need to remember that this was an option more often. A moment later, and he was in the main command chamber, with everyone saluting him. He returned the salute quickly, and was moved to the center of the chamber, where the command staff were all assembled. All were awaiting his first order or question, while still performing their duties with precision and almost graceful efficiency. He didn't wait to begin. Don't sugarcoat it. Which stations crossed and how fast? Of the 9 stations, they've crossed 5 in the last 8 hours. Readings indicate they've leveled out in speed in the last 3, however. ETA of 30 hours and 7 minutes. Mazzy answered. Over the last 8 hours? Why wasn't I informed when the first station was tripped? Sir, you were? Hawn took a moment to think, as well as quickly check his internal systems, along with that of the stations, and came to a shocking conclusion. Inform Farmhold we are cutting all but the data gate, then close those links down. Yes, sir. But why? Because I got your message as I was just exiting the gate at Farmhold, and I turned right around. Somehow, that took 8 hours with an IttR gate. There's something wrong. Gate closed. Mazzy looked at Hawn quizzically. Shall I inform the fleet? I'll handle that now. Hawn pressed a few keys, opening up comms with the entire fleet and station. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Hawn, Lord of Nomad's Forge. We are now less than 30 hours from contact with the rogue cosmic ship Reclaimer and its attendant fleets. Your captains and commanders are fully briefed on all plans and strategies we intend to employ. You all have been drilling on your individual parts and duties for weeks. I cannot promise that each and every one of you will make it through this unharmed, or even alive, but I can promise that they will pay for every harm they inflict. Many of you are here because you believe in, trust, and follow your commanders without a second thought. Some are here because you owe me a favor. And some of you are here because this threat needs to be stopped before it can grow. And others are here for nothing more than the battle to come. Regardless, to each and every one of you, I extend my thanks. No matter your reasons, your presence is welcome and shall not be forgotten. All command level staff, as we have agreed, rotate all personnel over the next 20 hours to have no less than 12 hours of rest and prep. This is looking to be the largest space battle in the current realm's history, short of the Cosmos Mutiny, and each of you need to be at your best. In 22 hours we will begin deployment. Until then, make ready your tools of war, steel your soul, and make peace with the gods. Hawn, Nomad's Forge, out. Not bad. Still need to work on your engines, the lieutenant quipped. I am not an orator, just a... Hawn began. You are the lord of Nomad's Forge, and the man we'd all follow into hell. Again, Mazzy said with a laugh. That there's enough, Hawn tried to hide his smile. Just for that, all of you are off duty for the next 12 hours. Now, off with you, or I will make it 16. Each of the command staff chuckled to some extent and made to leave after ensuring all other rotations were being conducted as planned. As secondary officers began to pick up where their seniors had left off, Hawn turned to step out. Just outside the door to the command center, the LT and captain called him over. Why do I get the sense that something is amiss? Sir, all the planets in the Forge system. Sarge, they're all showing multiple subterranean nuclear detonations in the last few hours. Pardon me? What's the damage? And how? The damage is technically minor. However, we can't ensure that there won't be any issues with the materials gathered and obtained until we can properly assess and hope to undo this damage. The LT handed Hawn an infotome. A month at least. As for how, it's all there. What is available so far, at least. We weren't the only ones hit, Sarge. Looking at the infotome, Hawn seemed distracted by the scale of what he was learning about. Store what we can. Whatever the automatics can handle, let them. Awfully nice timing for this, and it might explain the issues with the gate, don't you think? Hawn looked at the captain, who only nodded in response. Now, you two are supposed to be off duty. Now go look like it. Hawn smiled, and as the two made their way to the lift to begin their prep and the rest for battle to come, Hawn moved in a different direction. This little snag changed the dynamic significantly if he didn't account for it quickly. Their ability to have near-endless supply and repair materials was part of their overall strategy, but not the entirety of it. The internal stores of the forge itself held a mind-boggling amount of material, both raw and processed. However, it needed to be utilized efficiently if they were still going to operate as they planned to. Instead of just pulling fresh material for all the tasks, they would need to sort and pull from these stores, which, while technically faster by being closer, they were stores that would not be restocked in the near future. If the invaders inflicted too much damage at one time, especially during the opening engagements, their ability to hold them at bay over the long term could be put in serious question. Hawn had confidence that they could still easily repair any amount of damage they had to, but the amount of simultaneous draws from the stores was going to be limited compared to the streams of resources that could be called forth from the system itself. But there were other options to make up this logistical bottleneck, and as Hawn tapped a code into a panel next to a door he had just arrived at, he knew, no matter the scale of the calamity that was apparently unfolding across the realms, he had to focus on that bit of the chaos he could manage. As the door opened, the little ones rushed out to see who had disturbed them. Hawn looked down with a smile while handing them each an infotome. Updates on your priorities and duties. Take a couple hours to familiarize yourselves with them. Then I want you two off duty for 12. An entire 12. Understood? Before he'd even finished, the little ones had already skimmed the new orders and looked up with a giddy exuberance Hawn feared had been lost forever. He nodded in answer to their unasked question before smiling wider and turning to his next destination. The sounds of excitement of the twins stopped just as the door slid closed behind them, and Hawn moved to a different section of the forge. Over the next few hours, almost every admiral or flotilla commander received a visit from Hawn. Last-minute assurances or modifications being addressed, and confidence is bolstered as each prepared for the oncoming battle. By the time of roll call, each ship and crew was ready and prepared for orders, and Hawn had a full and complete understanding of the forces under his command, their mood, and their demeanor. He had also now been fully informed as to the nature and known facts of the metatonic calamity that was currently ongoing. The effect on the forge was, at best, a happy coincidence for their attackers. At worst, it showed a much greater hand was moving things. And Hawn knew it was the latter. For a moment, he pondered how far this plan of a madman went, because Hawn had a feeling that this had shifted things in some fundamental way. He wasn't sure how, but events of this scale rarely lacked for unexpected consequences. The ships and crews were deployed according to agreed-on plans, and as they waited out the last hours until the arrival of the Cosmic Ship Reclaimer and the fleet of ships under its command, all intelligence suggested that they were outnumbered in capital vessels at a 3 or 4 to 1 rate. For each such vessel, 50 or more ships of smaller classes were confirmed as attendant. For thousands of such ships at Hawn's command, that made it a 20 to 1 ratio at the very least. The roughly 300 command and capital class ships he had were made up around a core of Ego Core ultra heavy ships at its center, and these vessels were being led by none other than Varya herself. Her return to the fleet after her involvement with Farmhold and the apparent origins of the calamity was one of the few things that caused Hawn to rearrange his prep time in order to meet her and gain a fuller understanding of the events. After that, and until the first alarm sounded indicating the arrival of their attackers, Hawn had focused on the preparations and plans that ensured that whatever disadvantage they were forced to endure, it would not keep them from holding the line and protecting their home. As the alarm sounded, the command center went quiet, awaiting Hawn's direction. For what was assuredly not going to be the last time, Hawn suppressed a shiver and spoke. "What do we have? Numbers and composition." "Scans indicate 250 capital ships, another 3,000 ships of the line, and perhaps 3 times that in smaller craft, approaching at maximum speed, effective weapons range in 1 hour. A near match for our own forces, but only a fraction of what we know they have," Hawn replied. "So, it's waves then. Very well. Activate the defense platforms. Level 1. Instruct the fleet to arrange in pattern green, 5, and hold." A series of 6 rings rising from the clouds that made up the edges of the forge system, massive weapon platforms of an entirely novel design, began to spin in place, with layered shield bubblings forming over them to protect them. These stations were larger than most capital-class ships and were completely unmanned, having the most advanced technologies available stuffed in to allow them to perform their many functions. While being massive weapons platforms, they also boasted incredible sensors, systems, and relay functions, allowing ships with the proper equipment to be transported from one platform's area of effect to another, or even back to the forge for repairs. Within the effective dome of their cover, the enemy's suppression of exclusion fields would be negated, allowing Hawn's forces to maintain the massive maneuverability advantage that they bestowed. The stations themselves did not lack for field drives themselves, but this is because their motive systems were of an altogether different nature than normal Realms design would envision. They had 6 facings, twin sets of 3, each with a slightly arcing cross face. From the end, great gouts of flame pushed and moved the stations, causing them to spin on their center, with various jets firing to adjust spin and angles. Each facing along the edges of its mile-wide surface, 100 capital class cannons faced, between the spinning bringing different facings to bear in remarkably rapid succession, and the difficulty it would be in landing a targeted shot on something moving so erratically. Each posed a serious threat to the oncoming attackers, along with whatever surprises that were not readily apparent. Platforms online. Rings 1 through 6 report full activation and are fully linked into the battle link, came the reply from the command station, where the captain and the LT were set up and coordinating the various elements of the defense. Excellent. Remember to advise all ships to keep their EF drives off until I give the signal. They still think we are as hobbled as they are. Let us not show our hand before it is proper. Hawn was acknowledged by a curt nod from the comms officer, who was already relaying Hawn's reminder to the fleet. Where are the rest of them? Not sure, ma'am, came the answer from the long-range sensor platform. The first wave seems to be deploying some sort of jamming cloud in their wake. We can't get any clear readings behind them. Hawn grinned slightly. Well, that does make things a bit more difficult. Are they still deploying it? Negative. It seems like it was deployed on the edge of a short-range system, sir, the officer replied. The shadow it's creating is small, but that is in cosmic terms, easily enough to conceal a huge fleet in a cosmic ship. Although, best guess is it's only going to last a few hours, day at most. More than long enough for their purposes, to keep us from having a clue of what they're up to while their van seeks to test our defenses, Hawn said, continuing to smile. It also means that they are similarly hampered in getting clear readings. Order rings 1 and 2 to begin firing. Target pattern, scatter, 3. But, sir, they're still out of range massively, was the reply, as his order was nonetheless carried out. Are they? The rounds those platforms fire are crystalline base formed as part of the firing sequence. Hawn smiled knowingly. They have a shelf life of just over an hour, which easily places our guests within their range. It's just not often you have targets in such a direct line charge at such ranges. In a few minutes, the truth of Hawn's assertions rang clear as impacts on the oncoming enemy shields were detected, with several of the smaller vessels outright destroyed in the hail of fire. Those smaller ships that tried to scatter to regroup behind the larger vessels and their stronger shields had to dodge fire as the platforms fired in predetermined arcs to discourage such maneuvers. However, while effective in destroying some ships, the primary effect of the long-range fire was to slow the advance of the ships as they rearranged to deal with Hawn's opening move. After nearly half an hour, Hawn called for a damage assessment. 1, maybe 2 damaged or crippled capitals. A couple hundred smaller craft likewise. Not a bad start, sir. Time to effective weapons range, 40 minutes. They've slowed down, but not by a lot. Shall we prepare torpedoes, sir? Mazzy asked. I do think so. Inform the fleet to shift to pattern Blue 7 and prepare to engage in torpedo fire. Begin station launching when ready. An alarm sounded as each of the attacking ships began to launch their own salvos of torpedoes. All ships, prepare for incoming torpedoes. Maintain positions as best you can. Deploy PD fighter drones. Tell me what they are firing at, if anything. A moment later, the reply came. It appears they are targeting ring platform 1-1. All of them. Now, I would say that is a surprise, but we did make it all but obvious that 1-1 is the linchpin of our defense dome. Hawn spoke calmly. All ships, after you get your first salvos off, begin maneuvers to assist in defending platform 1-1. You all know what you have to do. Have 1-1 begin to withdraw, adjust ring 2 firing patterns to cover. Over the next 20 minutes, the flurry of tower-sized torpedoes from Nomad's forward would fly into the oncoming ships and burst to reveal dozens, if not hundreds, of sub-munitions that would seek out the nearest targets, combined with the waves of fire from the stations as well as the ships of the fleet that tore into the attackers. Streams of torpedoes being fired at platform 1-1 were being destroyed by mass point defense fire, as well as the efforts of wings of fighter drones seeking out and destroying torpedoes that would hit the platform or other vessels. As the line of attacking ships finally reached weapons range of platform 1-1 and the rest of the fleet, they had lost almost a fifth of their strength. However, Hawn, for his part, was also similarly reduced. None of his capital ships were destroyed. However, several had been pulled from the lines to be repaired, and the same could be said of most of his force reduction, as any ship with significant damage was ordered back to be repaired far sooner than most doctrine would suggest. Thus, he was preserving more of his ships, but at the cost of weakening his current strength rapidly. Get Ring 3 firing, and inform the fleets we are now in pattern Red 2. Engage and destroy the foe. EF drives active. Hawn was cut off before he could continue. Sir, getting contacts coming through the jamming field. It's another wave. Twice the size of the first. Weapons range, 50 minutes. Well, well. I think they have figured out we're not going to go out quietly. All ships, maintain formation and engagement protocols. Ring 2, maintain fire on the first wave. Rings 3 and 4 begin long-range harassment fire on the second wave. How far back has platform 1-1 been pushed? Entering ring zone 2 now, sir. Well, there goes the first half of the easy-to-give space, Hawn said. Remember, folks, if they push 1-1 back into zone 4 or destroy it, they'll likely be able to start launching boarding operations on the station, and they have millions of men just waiting for that. Hawn took a moment to review the situation's logistics, and saw with worry that they could only keep up this fire rate of torpedoes for another hour at most. The shutdown of the forge's main construction systems was slowing replenishment rate far more severely than he had anticipated. They had intended as one of the main means of thinning out the attacking ships as they approached, but if they could not maintain the rate of fire envisioned, the fields of destruction would not have the overwhelming effect it was currently capable of. Reduce station fire to 1/4, target core groupings. Hawn gave the order begrudgingly. At this rate, they could actually begin to restock to a minor degree. Hopefully enough for a high-intensity final blow by the time the opportunity arrived. As he watched the various displays and screens, seeing the battle in as large or small scale as needed, Hawn saw how his allies were easily outmaneuvering their targets, only to then witness the number advantage begin to show. The attackers were covering each other with admirable skill, limiting the advantage of his ships to ensuring that they could avoid most of return fire, while only whittling their targets down slowly. The attackers' forward momentum had nearly been checked, though, with platform 1-1 again able to fire, as it had ceased as it began to withdraw. For almost 40 minutes, Hawn's foes reaped a mighty toll on the attackers. Ships would fire on an attacking grouping only to disengage quickly and shift towards another group, leaving the first group open to fire from the ring platform, and vice versa. The high amount of drilling they had done in the time they had allowed the ships and the platforms to work together in tandem to a degree that made Hawn smile in pride. Reduced to less half of their initial strength, with the wreckage of their fellow ships becoming a significant hazard, the first wave broke and began to fall back in a fighting retreat, bringing a cheer from all in the command center, only for a single shouted call to silence it suddenly. "Second wave, 5 minutes out, and firing boarding torpedoes at all capital and line-class ships." To be continued. If you'd like to contribute to the further exploration and explanation of the realms, please consider leaving a comment, a like, and sharing the video around. I read all the comments and make efforts to reply to each. Thank you for helping to grow the channel, and know I look forward to each and every one of your comments. Other methods of support can be found in the channel's description. Thank you for watching.